All right. Hey, welcome to the LA84 Foundation Podium Chat. I want to welcome everyone who's joining us live or watching this as a recording. This is really exciting because we have a special guest today to talk about the connection between Olympic sports and STEM. My name is Ricardo Valerdi. I'm with Science of Sport, and I'm really happy to be here as your host. But really, the star of the show is Kyra Condie, who is a professional climber, and we want to hear all about her and what she does. I have a million questions for her. But first, Kyra, say hello and welcome.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I love STEM, so I was a science major in college, so I'm excited.
Great. Well, let's get right into that. So tell us, what did you major in college?
So I actually majored in animal sciences with a pre-vet focus. So I still intended to go to grad school eventually, but I want to be a vet, and so I loved all the science classes like chemistry, OChem, biology, genetics. All of those were my favorite.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get more into the connection between some of the classes that you may have taken in school, but also the Olympic sport that you compete in. So tell us, what is your Olympic sport and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so my Olympic sport is sport climbing, and it was actually brand new in the 2020 games, which then happened in 2021. And I've been doing it ever since 2009, and we only became included in the Olympic program in 2016, and so it's really exciting. And we are now included in the next two games, including the LA 2028 games. So it's really exciting, and it's really cool to have seen the process of where climbing has gone.
That's phenomenal. So, what is sport climbing? I mean, how can you just explain, like, what you start on the ground and you climb up?
Yeah,
It sounds
definitely.
easy, right?
Yeah, so there's actually three main disciplines of climbing. So there's sport lead climbing, which is when you have a rope and a harness on and you do more like 60 moves. So it's a little bit more endurance based. There's bouldering, which is more power based. And so that's like really hard moves. And that's when you only fall onto a pad on the ground and you don't go up very high. And that's usually more strength and power based. And then there's speed climbing, which is like the most self-explanatory, and that's where it's always the same climb, and you could climb on the same wall in Chicago as you could in Moscow, Russia, because it's standardized. And that one we can have world records on, and it's 15 meters tall, and that's all about how fast you go. So those are like the three main disciplines of competition climbing.
And which one do you do?
My favorite is definitely bouldering, but the Tokyo 2020 games was actually a combined, so you had to do all three disciplines.
Oh,
Which
wow.
yeah, which is really crazy because you had to do endurance, like strength and speed all combined together. So you had to be a true jack of all trades.
Wow. That sounds pretty difficult, but you have to train, really intensely for those kinds of things. So tell me a little bit more about the training that you do. How do you prepare for these kinds of things? Like, do you train every day or do you just, you know, play video games when, you're not doing climbing? Like, how do you spend your time?
Yeah, so I was in school and then I graduated in 2018. And so from 2018 till now, I've been focused completely on climbing. Outside of climbing, I also am part of the board of directors of USA Climbing. So I voice the opinion of the athletes to the organization, which is really, really cool. And I'm also part of the athlete commission for our international federation as well. And so that feels like I get to really make sure that the organization is reflecting the wants of the athletes, which I really enjoy. But then as far as training goes, I basically train 5 days a week. So kind of like a full-time job. And the only thing that really restricts my ability to keep training like more than that is with climbing, your skin just gets destroyed because you're grabbing onto holds and it's all about the friction on the holds. And so when you slide off, it like destroys your skin a little bit. So that's usually what makes you have to have a rest day.
So you're not allowed to wear gloves.
You could wear gloves. It's just you slide more, and so it's a lot easier to climb without them. So even though it hurts your skin, it's better to do it without it.
Sure. Wow. And so, how long have you been doing climbing? And I'm also curious if you did other sports growing up. So, can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I tried all sorts of sports growing up. I tried gymnastics, I tried soccer, I tried track. And none of them were really sticking as like my thing until I found climbing, which was when I was in 7th grade. And it was like pretty obvious that I just loved it and couldn't get enough of going to the gym. And I found it actually through a birthday party, like at the climbing gym.
So you grew up in Minnesota?
I did, yeah.
And so if somebody in the 7th grade was interested in getting started with climbing, whether they lived in Minnesota or any other city in the US, how can they get started? How do they find these gyms?
I would say definitely try and find your local climbing gym. A lot of gyms have youth programs too, so you can climb with people your age and get a really good start with coaching into the sport. And I think it's a really amazing sport because you can do it for your entire life. Like I see people who are like 85 years old in the gym, next to the kids on the team who are 10, 11, 12, so, and even younger than that too. So I think it's a really amazing sport for that reason.
What if you're afraid of heights?
So for me, I actually am kind of afraid of heights. Like I do not want to stand on the edge of a cliff without a rope. But as soon as I have a rope on, I feel a lot safer. And so I think it's a fear that you can really get over pretty easily in that case.
Okay, so we can have a rope on the whole time.
Yeah, you can, especially if you're doing, the lead climbing or the top roping. You'll have a harness and like safety mechanisms in place. And then with bouldering, you just don't go up very high in the first place.
So if you slip, the rope catches you before you hit the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's good to know. Good to know. So tell us a little bit about your experience as an Olympian. What's that like to represent your country in international competition? Like, tell us a story or something that you can share with us about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot of pressure to, go to another country for the Olympics and represent your sport and your country, especially in climbing, since it was the first time anybody was ever going to be seeing climbing on the Olympic stage. It was a lot of pressure to like represent our sport well and make sure people really saw what it truly is. And I think we actually did a really good job of that. I think a lot of people are really interested in climbing now after seeing it in Tokyo. So, that was something I was really psyched about. Let's say something fun about the Olympics is that everybody there is super tall. Like, so I'm only 5'4", but most sports, like people are just really tall, and so like I felt tiny in the Olympic Village. So I thought that was kind of fun.
But being small is an advantage in your sport, no?
Yeah, climbing is kind of cool because it really has a diverse type of body type that is good at climbing. So being 5'10" versus 5'4", there's different advantages. Like I'm going to be able to easily do a move that somebody else who's taller can't, and vice versa.
So I just thought a tall person could reach farther up and things, but not the case, right?
Yeah, not always. Sometimes there's like a really high foot that you need to put your foot on. And if you're really tall, you're like really tall and in a small box. And so it's hard to like actually generate power towards the next hold. Whereas if you're smaller, you're way more comfortable in that position and can do the move a lot easier.
Wow, that's amazing. Let's shift a little bit to your educational background. You said you majored in animal science at the University of Minnesota. So let's start with, how did you get interested in that when you were in high school, or was it before that? How did you know that was your major?
Basically, ever since I was a kid, whenever anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was always a veterinarian or a pro climber. And so I've always thought, why not both? And so, as of right now, like I said, I'm putting off grad school to focus on climbing. Since, there's a kind of a finite time you're able to be at your athletic peak. And so that's kind of what I'm focusing at right now. But yeah, I was always interested in being a veterinarian. So I wanted to do a major that would best prepare me for that.
Nice. And then in high school or college, did you have a favorite class or topic that you really, latched onto?
Yeah, I think I definitely loved chemistry the most, both in high school and in college. I think my favorite class through all of college was OChem 1 and OChem 2, which is organic chemistry. Um, and I think that's like really just the way my brain works. It's kind of like in puzzles, and you can like, figure out the way that things work, which is also why I think I'm attracted to climbing as well, because a lot of it is problem solving.
So can you expand on that a little bit? How is climbing like problem solving? What's the connection?
Yeah, so the way that a climbing competition actually works is you have never seen the climb that you're going to get on before. So you come out and you see it for the first time and you have to look at it and figure out how you're going to climb it. So sometimes that means like, okay, left hand here, right hand here. But sometimes there's something tricky that you maybe wouldn't be able to notice off the bat. Like sometimes there's a foot jib that is upside down. So that's like the spot where you'd put your foot. And that maybe means that you need to put your foot first before going with your hands. So that's something that like you have to like think about on the ground and figure out while you're on the wall as well.
I see. So they're all different. You're problem solving, trying to figure out which, hold to grab first and second while not slipping or
Yeah.
falling.
It's a lot of things to think about at once.
So do you ever think about the connection between Newton's laws of motion, like, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, or force equals mass times acceleration? Do those things ever go through your mind as you're going up that wall?
I think definitely in concept, maybe not in direct. Like I'm not thinking, okay, an object in motion tends to stay in motion, but that's definitely something that comes to effect on the climbing wall a lot. Like sometimes there's a move that you need to swing your feet through, jump on a hold, and then jump through to the next hold. So that's something you want to think about where your momentum is, which direction you're swinging, because that's the way that you're going to continue swinging. So things like that happen a lot.
Mm-hmm. I understand there's also a lot of math in the scoring of climbing. So can you explain to us in very basic terms, how is that scored? You mentioned there's 3 different events, right? So one of them is just time based, right? But can you explain the scoring part and then how you use math to figure out, if you're going to qualify for certain events?
Totally. Yeah. So for the Olympic format specifically, because they combined 3 different disciplines, the way they had to do it was by rank. So they took your rank in each discipline. So say I won speed climbing, got a first place, and then I got a third place in bouldering and a third place in lead. I would have 1 times 3 times 3, which would be 9. And so then my rank was 9. So somebody else who maybe got 2 first places and a 10th place would have 1 times 1 times 10. And so they have a 10th place. Or a score of 10, and then because mine was 9 and theirs was 10, I would get first and they would get second. And so that was really complicated when you were trying to qualify for an event, because that was the same scoring system that they were using. And so you would finish climbing, but your rank would change as other people climbed, because maybe I started off in second, but then someone would beat me. Now I'm in third, now I'm in fourth. So I had to keep recalculating my score to see where I could end up. And so that was, when I was trying to qualify for the Olympics, I had a calculator out in one hand and like the scores out in my other hand, and was just doing math the whole time to try and figure out whether or not I qualified.
And what was the cutoff for qualifying?
I qualified at an event in Toulouse, France, which is actually where this poster is from, this one. And that was, you had to get top 6 at that event to qualify.
I see. So, of course, if you got first place, you're the top person, but not everybody can do that well in all 3 events, right?
Yeah. And so I was trying to calculate, once I finished climbing and was done with all 3 events, 2 of my scores were already decided. Those events were done. And I had my last score, which was changing because people were still climbing. And so what I did was I calculated the worst I could do. So I was like, okay, there's 5 people left. That means the worst I could do is 13. And once I figured that out and put in people's best possible scores, that's when I realized that I had for sure qualified.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Wow, I had made the mistake of not doing that the day before for somebody else. And so I figured out my mistake in my math. And then when it was my turn to be stressed, I knew exactly what to do.
Nice. So without the math, you just wouldn't know where you stand.
Yeah, I would have just been sitting there stressing and watching scores change.
Wow. Pretty cool. So I wanted to ask you about the gear that is used in your sport. So I understand you have some stuff to show us. Can you kind of go through that, explain how that works? Like, what is each thing called, and then what is it actually used for?
Yeah, definitely. So, this is a climbing shoe, and you can see that they're like really small, and the type of rubber on them is really sticky rubber. And so that's so you can step on really tiny footholds, because sometimes the foothold that you're stepping on is like just itsy bitsy, and you have to like keep the tension like this just on the edge of something. And so they're really specialized to do that. And there's also sticky rubber on the heel, because sometimes you use your heel on a hold, stuff like that. And so they're pretty uncomfortable, and climbers are kind of like ballerinas in that our feet do not look pretty. And then I also have a chalk bag, which can be really fun sometimes. So this one's a really cute one. And so you put chalk on the inside and you keep that around your waist so that you can chalk up your hands so that they're not as sweaty when you're climbing, because it's all about the friction on the hold. And so if you have sweat on your hands, you slide off the hold and you want them to be dry. And this is a more normal one instead of the really cute fuzzy one like this one. And then the other thing I have is this one's called a tension block, but what it is it has a bunch of different holds on it, and so like different depths. And what you do is you hang weight off of this, or hang this on a tree and then hold the hold and like train it in that way, and so it can make your fingers stronger. And sometimes people do like one finger stuff, 2 fingers in this one, and then these are edges that are just different sizes, and so that's all about training your finger strength, which is really unique to climbing. So sometimes there's people who are amazing sportsmen in like soccer or some other sport, and then they come to climbing and they have never used their fingers like that before, and so that's a big difference between climbing and other sports. But that's all I have for show and tell, I guess.
So we were in the middle of talking about where to get some of that gear and how much the gear costs. Can you just recap that real quick in case it got cut off?
Yeah, totally. So, some of the easiest places you can go is there's definitely somewhere local that you can probably find that sells climbing gear. So, REI does as far as a bigger retailer, but you can also go to local climbing gyms, and they tend to have shops in the front that should have climbing gear where you can try on shoes and find all of that stuff.
Cool. So our main audience for these podium chats are elementary and middle school students who are studying STEM, among other things, and doing sports. So what possible advice do you have for them, as they're going through school and, facing challenges? Can you use any examples from sport climbing or any examples from your own experience that may benefit them?
Yeah, I think finding a good balance of school and sport is so important, because you do get to exercise your brain in a sense and in school, and then you get to exercise your body in sports. And I think they really balance each other. And that's actually something I've been missing a lot recently is the ability to balance both of those things. Like I've been doing a lot of sport, and so I really miss school and like taking notes and going to lectures and stuff. And so I really think finding that balance and figuring out what works for you is really important.
We have a question from the class who wants to know, how many medals have you won?
At our national championships, a lot. I have won our nationals. I won a lot of youth nationals. More recently, I've made finals in World Cups a couple times. So that's getting top six places, but only top 3 get medals. Sadly, do not have an Olympic medal, but my friend Nathaniel does, and he's who I trained with leading up to the Olympics. So he got the silver medal, and so that was really exciting.
Nice. And are you going to try to qualify again for 2024?
We'll see. I don't know what I'm planning on doing yet, but the format of the Olympics is changing again for climbing, and so it's kind of I'm really interested to see how that new format plays out, because it's not the same combined that I described before.
So it might be 3 individual medal opportunities as opposed to
it's going to be 2. So ideally we'll get to 3. But first of all, it's going to be a combined of bouldering and lead, and then speed is going to be separate because it's the most different of the 3 disciplines.
I see. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. How can we follow USA Climbing. I mean, we got your Instagram, we got your page. We know that there's competitions going on internationally, but what can we do in the meantime to follow the sport and learn a little bit more about it?
Yeah, usually there's free live streams online on YouTube to watch the competitions. So if you follow USA Climbing on Instagram, which is just USA Climbing, they'll post about live streams. And usually if I'm competing at an event, I'll post a link to the live stream on my Instagram story so that people can watch it and find it and watch online. And they're typically free, which is awesome.
Oh, nice. Kyra, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's an animal on your bed.
I know she just left, but that's one of my cats. I have 2 cats, so that one is named Pika, the one that was just there.
I assume they're good climbers because they're cats and they are your cats.
I would hope so, but they're actually shockingly unathletic for cats. I don't know how that happened, but
you got to work on them a little bit.
Exactly.
Super cool. Well, just to kind of start to land this plane a little bit, I just wanted to ask you some parting questions in terms of what you're what you're most inspired by in terms of getting up in the morning and working on your craft. Like, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you excited? Like, give us some of that good Kyra aura, and can we learn from you what keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one of my superpowers in climbing is my ability to stay motivated. Like I tend to have just really high psych in general. Like I'm a pretty psyched person. But I think a couple of things is in climbing, you're always doing something different. Like every time you go to the gym, you can get on a new climb and you can do a move you've never done before. That's completely different from maybe any other move you've done before. So you're always challenging yourself in totally different and new ways. And I think that's definitely what keeps me coming back. And also it makes climbing competitions somewhat frustrating because you never know what you're going to get. So you can train as much as you can. You can be the strongest you've ever been. And you might see a move that you have no idea how to do or have never tried before, or maybe you're really bad at. And so like that's just something that's completely out of your control in climbing competitions. So kind of the want to make those types of moves, like, less and less, that gets me up in the morning. And then also the desire to improve, I think, is something that I have always really loved. And I love the feeling of working at something and getting better at it. Like, I think that has a lot of gratification in it, in kind of all things.
So tell me, how do you handle failure?
Yeah, so climbing is a lot of failure. Like, you are not usually doing the climb in the gym if you're working on. If I'm having a training session, I am falling more than I am being successful, for sure. And so I think that's something that you really just get used to in climbing, because it just means you're getting better and you're getting closer. And so I think it's actually a really good life lesson is like, you find the small wins. So like sometimes instead of doing a climb, it's maybe getting closer to doing the climb. Or sometimes instead of doing the move that you're working on, like say it's a big move, up with your left hand, like maybe the closer you get is the win that you find. So like instead of not touching it this time, I touched it this time, and like, oh, this time I almost grabbed it, and like this time I swung out on it a little bit. And those are the wins that you find, so that they keep you positive, basically, instead of just seeing the negatives of not doing the move. Like you're seeing the positives of getting closer to doing it.
Love it. Small wins. Mm-hmm. That's worth the price of admission right there. I love it. Okay, well, Kyra, I want to thank you again for spending some time with us and putting up with Spider-Man for a little while. And I want to wish you the best of luck in your training. We will be following you on Instagram and on your website, and we'll be looking and learning more about the sport climbing along the way. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Kyra Condie, please put your hands together for her excellent presentation and just wise words of wisdom. We'll be following you, Kyra. So I want to thank again the LA84 Foundation for making this program a reality. Help us bring students and teachers closer to the sports in the Olympics, but also learning the connection between math, science, PE, and the sports that are in the Olympics. So thank you again, Kyra, and thank you again, all teachers and students who are part of this program, LA84 Foundation. We love you. Take care.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope you guys try climbing.
Yeah.